I've said it before. When you see a number like that right now, that's a lot of that can be because they bought a house that they're closing on. They tried to get more money. They needed to sell, and they finally just gave up and said, you know what, like we got to get rid of this thing.
Yeah.
Like that happened with me this summer. We sold one of the listings I had. We had to sell for less than we wanted to, but if we didn't sell it, then they wouldn't get their dream home. And over the last, I think 3 years, they were still up like 200,000.
You're listening to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast with your hosts, Paul Stevenson, David Warren, and Greg Campbell. Let's see what's going on in the world of real estate today.
Hello. Welcome back. The Ottawa Real Estate Podcast. We are here, most of us. It is Paul Stevenson and Greg Campbell today. We are the hosts of the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast. We're missing David Warren today, unfortunately. Woke up feeling a little raspy. Says, you know, I'm not going to subject our listeners to my hoarse
Something
voice
going around.
Yeah.
Again.
So we're back. We're here. We are near the end of August, which is pretty insane. Still feels like February as far as I'm concerned. And the market seemingly is just stagnant is what I would say. We're going to get into everything today. We got a few articles we're going to go over. Greg's got a couple good stories. We're going to give you some stats. But start off, I'll lead off with thanking everyone who tuned in last week for the live show. It was quite fun. I think we're going to do that probably once a month now.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening now on YouTube or any other channel, please make sure to subscribe, like, share, review, whatever you'd like. And a quick shout out to North Brew, who I think I actually forgot about altogether last week. If you go to northbrew.ca and use the promo code podcast, they're going to give you 20% off your coffee order, all coffee orders. And 20% of that order goes towards the Ottawa homeless community. So great coffee, great cause. And here we are. Greg, how was your week? How was the weekend? How you doing?
It's good. It was productive. I'm, summer's been, as we talk about it every week, it's been interesting and different. And I'm ramping up to have a very aggressive fall, I think. I'm doing things a little bit differently in my business, and I'm really hoping to help more people than usual this fall. With the market being how it is, it's a little bit unpredictable, but I think it's going to take a turn for the better. A lot of people are saying the worst, I'm saying for the better. But other than that, I got a deal done last week. Weekend was great. I'm here now. How about yourself, Paul? How was your weekend?
Weekend was good.
What did you get up to?
Well, my son was here last week, which is nice. Summer gives us a bit more time to spend some QT together. We made a little day trip to Montreal on Friday. Brought my parents. It was great. Went to Old Port. My parents both grew up in Montreal. My mom said until she was, I think in her mid-20s, early 30s, she'd never been to Old Port and grew up in Montreal her whole life. She's like, I don't. Yeah, it's insane. But it's one of those things, you live in the city, you don't think of, you don't become a tourist. But yeah, so we went to Old Montreal, went for a nice lunch, went to the Oratory and drove back. It was great. Nice little day. It's a hop, skip, and a jump from Ottawa, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of the weekend just kind of ran errands, took it easy, hung out around the house, did some yard work, got crazy, went to Home Depot, Bed Bath and Beyond, No, it was good. It was relaxing. Did a little reading and ready for the week. It's going to be a busy week, I think. And as you said, it's funny. We're always so optimistic, but everywhere I look, every morning I get headlines from across Canada from different news outlets and so on pertaining to mortgages, and every single day it's like negative, mildly negative,
mm-hmm.
negative, like everything. It's all doom and gloom. And I don't know if I'm just too much of an optimist to see what's actually happening, or if that's just how they sell records and sell papers, and we're just we're more in tune with what's happening. But I mean, we've had a lot of comments where people are, you guys are always bullish and this and that, but I try to be as honest as I can on the show. I mean, there's no benefit to us lying about what we think is happening in the market. It's not like we don't get business if there's no home selling. It's not like us saying it
mm-hmm.
bumps our numbers or anything like that. So I mean, it really is our true, genuine feeling. I just this last couple weeks, it's interesting. I mean, we talked about that kind of standoff that we're seeing between buyers and sellers, and I really do think that's exactly where we are. Like, sellers have this, perception of what they're going to get, and buyers have this perception of what they think they should be paying, and there's this gap in the middle, and nobody wants to budge. And I think with the rate hike very likely looming in September, we're basically 2.5 weeks away from potentially another rate hike, very likely another rate hike for the variable rates. And I think that's going to probably shift things again in the favor of buyers, I would imagine, from a pricing standpoint. But who knows? We don't know where things are going to go. And now I wouldn't say my optimism is waning. I still feel confident the fall is going to be very busy, and we're going to see prices go up again. But we're going to have to see what happens with this next rate hike, because it's really, like you said, it's very unpredictable right now.
Yeah, and I think I don't know about prices going up too much more, but I don't think they're going to drop too much, much further than where they're at now. It's possible they can. I mean, overall, I think in Canada, they're predicting another 12% or something like that as an average, which we know is basically irrelevant because every market is totally different.
Yeah.
So Ottawa still being a little bit more insulated. I'm finding that I'm not even having conversations about rates with people that I'm talking to right now. No one is even questioning it. The question is, are you pre-approved? Yes. What can you afford? I can afford this. Let's go. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no other, what do you think about the market? It's not the same way. It's like, you need to buy a house. Let's go shopping. Basically, the seller, I tell them, and I'm very, as I say, bullish. I'm very bullish on the summer market in Ottawa being slower, as some people think that's completely false for some reason, but historically it happens. I also actually, just to confirm that, because most of the headlines are talking about how it's down, everything's going down. I found 5 articles online throughout North America where top realtors in their regions, over the past couple of years, are saying typically, in those areas, summer is also slow for them, and then it picks up again in the fall. So, believe what you want to believe. If you want to buy a house, you want to buy a house. I'll just go into some numbers here quickly based on that intro. I did a quick run through of Barhaven 3-bedroom townhomes. As we know, it's still the hottest market in the city, basically, is townhomes at that price point. So right now in Barhaven, we have 26 active. The average list price is $642,000, 35 days on market. So that's, some people would still think that that's very high. Conditionally sold one at $629,000, 20 days on market. Sold, there was 2 sold. This is in the last week. 2 sold in the last week. Average was $605,000, 11 days on market, 97% sales price to list price. Now, I've said it before. When you see a number like that right now, that's a lot of that can be because they bought a house that they're closing on. They tried to get more money. They needed to sell, and they finally just gave up and said, you know what, we got to get rid of this thing.
Yeah.
That happened with me this summer. We sold one of the listings I had. We had to sell for less than we wanted to, but if we didn't sell it, then they wouldn't get their dream home. And over the last, I think, 3 years, they were still up like 200,000, you know what I mean, in equity. So it was like, sure, it'd be nice to have the extra $30,000, $40,000, but realistically, they're okay. Anyways, in 2021, the same week, 6 3-bedroom townhomes sold in Barhaven. Average price was $563,000 in 26 days on market.
Last year.
Mm-hmm. So, look at that. So even if it's down right now, that's still an increase of basically $40,000, and it took longer to sell last summer. So, figure it out.
So an extra 10 days on market on average, but it's increased by 50,000 over the year.
Yeah.
Worth the 10-day wait, I would say. But yeah, I think it goes back to what we were saying before. It's one of those things where people are, they hear of, Susie and Sally or whoever selling their home for, $600,000 more than what they paid for it 3 years ago. And there's kind of this unrealistic expectation of what you might get for your home. And there are anomalies still. You have a perfect, beautiful, brand new build home in a perfect neighborhood and the right buyer comes along. I mean, you're still going to get those kind of outliers. But from like what you just explained, 30, 35 days on market, 600 and, I think it was 20,000-30,000 on average for the listings of the townhomes. I mean, that to me,
well, no, right now it's active. The average is 642,000.
Right.
35 days on market. So like that's interesting to me. Like, what if any of those sell within the next week? What are they going to sell for? What's the bottom line?
Yeah. And that's more of a balanced market, right? I mean, 30, 35 days on market is really what the average typically is in Ottawa historically. I mean, if we looked at the last, we've been talking about the last 65 years when we were looking at those stats of year over year increase, I would say if we looked at average days on market as a whole over the last, 50, 60 years, it's probably going to be somewhere between 30 and 45 days. So, if we're just talking averages and historically speaking, like this is what would be a normal balanced market. Now, I don't think it's going to stay this way, which is why I it may be balanced right now, but will it be this way in 6 months? Unlikely. Either. And what I'm interested to know, like going into the winter, Greg, like what I can tell you what I think is going to happen, but I'd like to hear, like, what is your prediction as far as, number of listings, sale prices? Like, what do you think is actually, what are we going to see likely come this fall, winter?
I'm big on winter. I'm big on buying and selling in the winter for many reasons. A lot of people don't think that it's a good time to buy. Everything is generally down a bit. I'm going all in this winter. I'm pushing tons of marketing material to my sphere and to clientele for this winter because I think it's going to be an opportunity for everybody. More serious buyers. Interest rates will be kind of like everyone's okay with everything. They have it figured out. I think this winter is going to be good, but I mean, the last couple of years, the spring market started like the second week of January, marking like some of the highest sales ever. I remember I had that in 2021. I had the highest selling townhome in this one area of Orleans, and still nothing has sold for more than that since 2021 of the same style. And this one was just okay, but for whatever reason,
And that was what month? In 2021?
January.
Yeah.
It was the first home on the market. We had like 40 offers or something like that. It was ridiculous. Do I think that's going to happen again? No, but I think that buyers are also right now a little bit more accepting of the fact that this is what the interest rates are and they have to move forward. So of course, I mean, we know how it works, right? Interest rates are down, prices go up. Interest rates come up, prices come down. It balances out. But right now, whatever you're buying, you're going to be paying more, over long term, and hopefully a little bit of a lesser price, but you're still spending the same amount of money. So it comes down to what we talk about every week. Do you need to buy a home or do you not? Just, if you sit here and try to read the market all the time, you're never going to do anything. You're just going to be, I mean, we talk about this all the time. It's ridiculous. I feel like a broken record every time. It's like, just do or do not, basically. Get the information, do or do not. Don't sit and complain and cry about it and wait for the perfect moment, because that doesn't exist. And if you don't take the risks, then you're not going to move ahead in life. What do you want to do? What is your priority?
It's like anything, right? There's that kind of, analysis paralysis where you're just kind of constantly analyzing, is now good? Should I wait? Should I have done it? Should I, shoulda. And then it never happens, right? There's never any action taken. So it is important, as you said, there's never going to be a perfect time to buy, but understanding the market, understanding where you're buying, whether or not you can afford it, and then putting a roof over your head. And if you're renting currently and you have the capacity to buy, I mean, no matter how you slice it, you're definitely going to always come out ahead by buying, as opposed to, when you're renting, you're obviously paying the mortgage for the landlord or the owner of the home. So it's much better to be putting that money back in your pocket. I always look at my mortgage payment as like a true investment payment. Like I'm putting that money aside for future consideration, whether or not the home appreciates or not. Even if it goes down slightly, I'm still putting that money aside that I'm not going to spend. I'm spending it on a roof over my head. And in, 15, 20 years, that money will come back to me in some capacity. So that's kind of how I think about the monthly payment. And I think it's important to, as you said, if you want to own a home, there's never a perfect time. You just have to kind of do it. And I mean, like I said, the first time I bought my home, the first home I bought, was in 2011. And I bought it for $212,000, and it was like a 3-bedroom townhome. And I, at that time, was not thinking, oh, I'm going to make 40% return on this. Should I do it? Should I not do it? I think my rate was 4% at the time. And that was just what it was. Like, it was just, I'm buying a home. This is the rate. This is the price. I sold it for $217,000 7 years later. I know I've talked about this, so sorry for anyone who's heard this story, but sold it for, it basically went up in value $5,000 over 7 years. But I was able to pull, $40,000 to $45,000 in equity out of the home, which I then used for the down payment on my next home. And the real kicker is that home that I sold for $217,000 a year later, when there was that huge bump, 2018, 19, 20, it's now, I think, listing at, they're over $400,000 for those same homes. So they've, literally doubled in value since I've sold it. And I'm not kicking myself about it. It was a good purchase at that time. When I sold it, it was a good sale. It was a record sale on the street. I bought another, semi that I got it a very good deal. I sold it for a record on that street at the time for that style of home. So it's just a matter of what's beneficial now. And then you reassess in 4 or 5 years, see where you're at, see what your goals are in life, and see if it makes sense to sell or refinance, renovate. And just keep going with the flow. But again, it all goes back to what you said, Greg. Do you want to own a home? And if you do, then, get in the game. And if you don't, then don't worry about it.
Yeah. I also think that a lot of people have this idea that with the market changing, that their rent is going to go down, or that they're going to be able to find a rental for less than maybe what they're paying right now. But I'm pretty skeptical on that. I don't know what you think about that. I think rents are going to go up or stay the same for a longer period of time. But I think there's a group of people that are sitting there hoping that with the prices going down and the rates going up, that their rent is going to drop by like $200 or something like that magically.
Well, there's still a lot of people migrating to Ottawa. So, I mean, if you're renting right now and you have a good rental payment on a monthly basis, I mean, certainly don't try to ruffle those feathers, because I think the less rentals that are available, if there's people coming to the city and people can't buy homes, there's going to be a lot more people going to the rental market, which is obviously going to drive prices up even further, especially if people can afford the higher rental prices. What we saw, and Greg, we talked about this last week, it's crazy to see that you can get, like a 1-bedroom condo for rent is, $2,000, $2,100 at best. But you can also get a 3-bedroom single family home in suburbia for like, $2,500 a month. So it's like, it goes from this, studio 1-bedroom downtown to like an actual single family home that you can fit, literally your whole family in as a young family. And it's a difference of $300-400 a month, which I find it makes no sense to me, but that's just where the market is. I mean, I guess nobody's going to be paying $5,000 a month for rent either, right? Unless you're an ambassador or someone who's like an international student of some sort. If you can afford $5,000 a month in rent, very likely you're going to be buying a home or finding a way to buy a home. So there is kind of that threshold, I guess, where it can't be too high. But when you're seeing a bachelor or a studio apartment going for almost comparable prices to a single family home, it's mind-blowing. Like, to me, it doesn't make any sense. One thing else I wanted to talk to, I read this article earlier today talking about the stress test, which kind of all comes full circle on what we're talking about as far as affordability and like you said, rates going up, prices coming down, and what people can afford. So this article talks about whether or not the Canada's mortgage stress test is still relevant. This was in Canadian Mortgage Trends, which is kind of they send me at least mortgage agents daily articles specific to the industry. So I'd like to read just a few excerpts from this. It says, earlier this month, the Bank of England scrapped its mortgage affordability stress test. With mortgage rates now north of 4% and 5% and presumably approaching their peak for this rate hike cycle, some are wondering if the changes to Canada's stress test are overdue. says the mortgage stress test requires both insured and uninsured mortgage borrowers to prove they can meet monthly mortgage payments based on a rate of 5.25 or 2 percentage points higher than their contract rate, whichever is higher. So these days, borrowers are commonly being stress tested at rates in excess of 6 and 7%, which is 100% accurate. I was doing some pre-approvals last week. We're qualifying people in the 6.5, 6.75 range, which means that even though their rate, the contract they're signing might be, 4.59 or whatever it is, 3.9 or whatever it is based on their rate and the lender and so on, we still have to qualify them as if their rate was 2% higher than what their actual contract rate is going to be. So it goes on to say the stress test for insured mortgages, so those with less than a 20% down payment, was first introduced in 2016 by the Department of Finance, while the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, OSFI, followed with its own in 2018 for uninsured mortgages or those with a down payment of more than 20%. So when this first came out, Greg, if you remember, 2016, it was only for people putting less than 20%. They have to qualify for a bit more. Anyone putting 20% or more as a down payment, they didn't have to worry about this. In 2018, they said, we're going to switch that. So now everyone has to follow under the stress test. So it says, fast forward to today, which is what we like to do. Home prices are now dropping across the country from the peak reached earlier this year, while interest rates have risen dramatically as the Bank of Canada tries to curb record inflation not seen since the 80s. In today's context, do the current mortgage stress test rules make sense? This is kind of the question they're asking. So the Director of Government Relations at MPC, Mortgage Professionals Canada, JP Boutros, says they're locking Canadians out of the market. There was a real good opportunity for people in 2020 and 2021 to get into home ownership with locked fixed money, but weren't able to because the stress test was so much higher than the actual available rates. So we were still qualifying people at 5.25, but rates were, sub 2% in some cases. Mm-hmm. So we're qualifying people for, double, 2.5 times what their actual rate is. Then it says there's the issue of variable versus fixed rate. I found this very interesting. It says the latter offers homeowners more stability on their mortgage payments, fixed rates, but were harder to qualify for until fairly recently. A typical fixed rate mortgage of 4.45 would be stress tested 2% points higher, so 6.45. Richer applicants may not have had a problem with trading extra cash for security, but Boutros says it wasn't great for less well-to-do homeowners who wanted into the market. And because of the stress test qualifications, when fixed rates started rising well ahead of the variable rates this year, it forced a lot of people to take a variable rate because that's all they could qualify for. So we had a few clients, I know, Greg, that, we're looking at fixed versus variable. We had to give them 2 different pre-approvals. So here's what your rate is. Here's what your pre-approval is if you have a fixed rate. Here's what your pre-approval is if you go with a variable rate. And that forced a lot of people to go with variable rates because they qualified for more. So that obviously is a personal choice, but that's just what happened with the market. It says here, data from CMHC shows that over half of the mortgages taken out earlier this year in 2022 were variable rate products. So 57% of people took variable, which I think is, I don't know what the historical stats are there. Dave would probably know that a bit better, but I think that's probably pretty close. I'd say it's probably somewhere I'd say the majority of people usually take variable, at least my clients, just because of the way that, I think there's a lot of value on variable, but they seem to think that's a high number. So maybe it's actually closer to 50-50. Lastly, it says people are shifting to variable rate mortgages primarily because the stress test was 5.25. So previously, regardless of what the variable rate was, we always pre-qualified people based on 5.25 if they took variable. And if they took fixed, then it was that 2% over what their contract rate is. So when fixed rates were at 4%, we were qualifying them at 6%. But if they took variable, we'd still be qualifying them at 5.25. So they'd actually qualify for more going variable. So what this all means. So it says, basically, as such, some Canadians are turning to be lenders, alternative lenders that aren't required to do mortgage stress tests, but often charge significantly higher rates. And we've seen this, Greg, ourselves with our clients. Boutros believes the Department of Finance and OSFI should be recalibrating the exact requirements of the mortgage stress test. They should have lowered the stress test in 2020 and 2021 to allow for first-time home buyers to get in and compete with the well-capitalized. I agree with that. It says at least one jurisdiction is doing away with its mortgage stress altogether. As mentioned above, the Bank of England has scrapped its equivalent of the test, although it does have other qualification guidelines still in place. So what they do is, it says one of their limits of the number of mortgages that can be extended to borrowers with a loan-to-income ratio of 4.5 or more. So we always talked about, your pre-qualifying is going to be somewhere between 4.5 or 4 to 5 times your income. So they kind of have that same loan-to-income ratio. And then lastly, it says it's become more challenging for existing home buyers with good financial history to lock into a fixed from a variable rate mortgage, since they have to requalify if they're switching lenders. And this is basically people are going into private mortgages and into B lending because some of them just have no choice now. So sorry, I know it was a very long article, but I thought all of that was very relevant to what we've been talking about. And I saw it this morning. I said, this is excellent. This is a very good summary. And I think there's nothing in there really that I disagree with. And I think it's very important. I think there's still some confusion from home buyers as well as to what these sorts of rate increases, what sort of impact that has on their buying power. If rates go up again in September, which is very likely, they're saying at least 0.5%, if not another 0.75%, which is going to bring rates to somewhere in the 5.25 to 5.45 range for prime. So even for variable rates, you're going to be looking at probably somewhere in the 4.5 range. We're still going to have to qualify those people at 2% higher than that. So, we're still looking at 6.5 to 7% for some of those clients. So it's going to reduce people's buying power again in September. So I think we are going to see in September, at least, we're going to see another probably slight decrease in home prices just because of affordability.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see, because I still have this feeling that there's going to be way more people shopping again. But, it's up to the market to dictate what that looks like, whether it's buyers, like you're saying, that can't afford much so that they just kind of stop, or they find ways to get it done. And then sellers are just going to have to adapt to it. But I do know that, some of the numbers now for the active listings, I think is probably a little bit high, but a lot of the sellers, it's like we talked about the standoff, right?
Yes.
So maybe the rate change will eliminate that standoff, and they'll have to take more of a hit, right?
I think September will be an interesting month because then the rate announcement's on September 8th, and then the next one's not until October 27th. So there's another, almost full 2 months, 6 weeks, 6.5 weeks there. But after that September 8th hike, it'll be interesting to see not only from a pre-approving standpoint, how it's going to impact clients that are actively shopping and pre-approved. And I've been telling people, like, if you're planning to get in there, best to do it before September 8th, especially if you're looking at getting a variable rate, just because it is, your rate will still increase September 8th, but your qualifying could change depending on how much they hike that. So September 8th, October 27th, and then December 8th is the last one of 2022. So it's been a wild year for announcements as far as rates. It seems to be the headlines everywhere is rates. And I mean, we deal with that all the time, right? I mean, I approach it the same way you do, Greg. The numbers are what they are. It's not something that we have any control over. We pre-approve you for what you can, and it's your job to basically figure out, if I say, you can buy up to 500,000 and your payment's going to be 2,000 a month. Can you afford that 2,000 a month? Do you want to pay 2,000 a month? That's a question also you have to ask yourself, and making sure that you are getting into a mortgage that is affordable for your family and yourself, and that you're not, stepping too far down that line. And the rules are pretty, they're pretty tight as far as the lending guidelines, as far as, your debt ratios and how much debt you can carry compared to your income and so on. So these are all things that we have to assess. But it's also important to assess yourself and say, okay, check yourself, as I think is said in the industry, to make sure that you're not overextending yourself. That's the word I was looking for. It escaped me for a few sentences there. Overextending yourself from a financial standpoint. It's great that you want to have that beautiful home, but is it going to, as we said, inflation's gone up, gas is higher, food is higher. Like, is it going to affect your ability to have the lifestyle you want because you're
when
paying
the
that
rates
extra money?
When the rates started going up, everyone was asking me what I thought about it. I said, I think it's great because it's promoting more responsible spending. And you need to be more aware. It's making you be more aware of what's going on around you and what the numbers are. You're not just wrapped up in this whole like, oh my God, real estate. It's making smarter decisions. So whatever you want to do, me, Paul.
I do.
Yeah, we definitely do see eye to eye on most of this. So, or all of it.
Stephen, I don't know if you can. We'll make sure to share that article as well, so that people can read up on the article we talked about. And why don't we slide in the mood boost, Greg? Since we're coming up on our 30. It's busy Monday / Tuesday for the listeners, and I got 3 here that I think will get people buzzing for the week. So, number one, why are frogs so happy? They eat whatever bugs them. Yes, of course. Why can't you use, number two, why can't you use Fortnite as a password? It's too weak. It's too weak, a Fortnite. Yes. For all the young listeners. Number three, why are stories about NASCAR so satisfying? Because they always come full circle. NASCAR. Yes. So for the listeners, I'm very intrigued to hear, if anyone was tuning in live, what your thoughts are. We're coming up on our 100th episode, Greg, 2 weeks from today. And we're considering doing at least one episode a month live so that we can answer questions live, can be a bit more interactive for the listeners and so on. So if you're still listening right now, let us know in the comments. What do you think about the live show? What sort of segments should we include in there? We definitely want to include a question and answer period. I thought that was great last time having the live questions because, they're all relevant to the conversation. It allows the listeners to actually be engaged and actually contribute to the conversation as well, which is important. But yeah, let us know what you think, and definitely make sure, as we said, to subscribe, to review, like, share, and let us know what time you would want us to go live. Last time we went 7 p.m. It was a Monday, and we had a lot of people tuning in. But if there's a time that you guys would prefer, certainly let us know, and we can try to accommodate. So, Greg, thank you as always for your insights.
Thank you.
Your beauty,
thank you, Paul.
For your beard.
Yes.
Have an awesome week, and we'll be back, everyone, next week. Episode 99. Going Gretzky on it.
All right. Going Gretzky.
All right. Take care. Deuces.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe because we'd really like that.